welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken held a two-day visit to China where he held meetings with Chinese President Xi Jinping, Chinese top diplomat Wang Yi, and also the Chinese Foreign Minister Jin Gang. The U.S. State Department regarding this particular engagement with the top Chinese officials of Secretary Blinken said Blinken held candid, substantive and constructive discussions with the Chinese officials. Also, there is a statement by the Chinese Foreign Ministry regarding Secretary Blinken's visit, which says this visit coincides with the critical juncture in China-US relations and it is necessary to make a choice between dialogue or confrontation, cooperation or conflict. Now, Secretary Blinken told media after his engagements with the Chinese officials that he called for direct engagement and sustained communication at senior levels to responsibly manage differences and ensure that competition does not veer into conflict. Likewise, we saw after this particular meeting with Secretary Blinken, Chinese President Xi Jinping said that the two sides have also made progress and reached agreement on some specific issues. He also hoped to see a sound and steady US-China relationship. Over the past several months, we have seen this relationship deteriorated on a range of issues that include trade, Taiwan, balloon controversy, and China's relations with Russia. Now, in today's program, we'll be talking about the significance of this particular visit. Will it prove to be a step to de-escalate the situation between the top two economies of the world? To discuss that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Shakeel Ramay, his senior economist. Later on, we'll be joined by other participants in the show. Mr. Shakeel Ramay, thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. First of all, regarding this particular visit, was there any substantive outcome regarding the trade war between the two countries as far as that one is concerned?
Thank you. I think it's not only trade war. So the war has been complicated now. It's a technological war, it's a diplomatic war, and it's an economic war now, not only the trade war. Definitely, whenever the two opposing sides, when they meet, a dialogue starts, it is a big achievement, because in the past we have seen, so there was accusations were going on and there was nothing was happening, and especially when there was balloon controversy and Secretary Blinken, he cancelled his visit, the situation became more tense and more complicated, and then Mr. Blinken has to wait for a long to get permission from China to visit China, and that is a big change, because in the past we have seen, so USA was never rejected any proposal. If they want to visit any country, they were welcome everywhere in the world. But it was happening first time China was saying, no, we don't want. If there is anything substantial, let us know, then we can talk. In this backdrop, so we can expect there would be some new changes. But until unless we have the complete information, we cannot comment on that.
So you just mentioned the balloon controversy. At that time, we saw that the planned visit of Secretary Blinken in February, that was postponed because of this balloon controversy. Now, this time around, he was asked a question by the media. Now, Secretary Blinken said that chapter should be closed. We saw US reacting vociferously regarding that flight of balloon over the US airspace. Now, if that was such a high reaction at that very time that led to the postponement of that earlier planned visit, now why that chapter should be closed? What do you understand of this?
I think USA miscalculated at that time. They were thinking they will be able to pressurize China to get the desired result. But what they got, China did not move an inch. Rather, China showed the muscles, okay, don't come to our country. And after that, continuously then the State Office and the Defense Secretary was also looking to visit the China, but China was denying. So after that, they got the message very clear, no more bullying. So no one is here to listen to you. But if you look at during this visit, two or three things are very important.
So basically, what before heading towards in the detailed discussion, what do you think has prompted China to accept this particular visit?
I think that's what I'm going to tell you.
Please go ahead.
So first of all, so China got the balloon controversy gone. So chapter has been closed. Second, the Secretary Blinken, by standing in China, declared that they are not in favor of independence of Taiwan. They are sticking to the policy which to the 3 communique and 6 assurances and the agreement which they had already.
Similar, that was a reiteration of earlier stance by US President Joe Biden when he met President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the G7 summit held in Bali in November.
But no, again, they have given assurance. So we are sticking to that, because in the recent past we have seen the Ms. Pelosi visit to Taiwan and other visits, it created a lot of controversies. So to close that chapter also, so he categorically mentioned that we are not in favor of independence and we are not here to interfere in the case of Taiwan. That is a big, you can say the big.
That was exactly sort of a statement by President Joe Biden when he had a meeting with President Xi Jinping in Bali in November, after which we saw there was a deterioration of the relationship between the two countries happening. President Biden at that time said he sought to assure President Xi Jinping that US policy on Taiwan, which has for decades been to support both Beijing's one China stance in Taiwan, has not changed.
But at that time, so they were saying we are free to do everything with them, building the defense cooperation, sending them the army and trainers to the Taiwan. They wanted to make it controversial, but China has categorically mentioned no. If you are sticking to one China policy, you have to stop these exercises, and you have to come very clear on that. So it is not like that one day you say one China policy, but how you define one China policy. That is a fundamental. China say Taiwan is a part. It is not some other, you can say, independent country, autonomous region within the China. It is an integral part. So you have to define the Taiwan policy in this sense. It is an integral part.
Your point is well taken. I'll come back to you for further discussion on this particular matter. We are honored to have been joined by another participant on the phone line. Dr. Shakeel is director at the China-Pakistan Studies Center, Institute of Strategic Studies in Islamabad. Dr. Shakeel, thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Now, Secretary Blinken had a 2-day visit to China, held very important engagements with the Chinese top officials. How do you see this particular development, the significance of this particular visit, especially over the past several months, as we have seen the bilateral relationship between the two top economies of the world deteriorated on various fronts?
Thank you very much for having me over this very important development that took place. In fact, there are two dimensions of this Anthony Blinken's visit to China. One is that's good news for both the countries who, despite having various confrontations and competition of sort and a kind of a conflictual situation, are now coming to terms with each other, and they are trying to find ways for peaceful, going ahead. Secondly, this is a good news for developing countries who are friends to China as well as to the United States of America. And Pakistan particularly, because we were actually, whenever this competition grows, intense, I think Pakistan would be the most affected country and a victim country, because we have a lot of friendship with United States, and we have declared China as long brotherly country and a country that we depend on heavily. So this is a good news for, I think, for Pakistan and for the region and developing countries, as well as for both countries. Now, when we talk of these two countries, I think one thing is to be kept in mind, that there is a lot of interdependence between the two countries. In international relations theory, we say complex interdependence that actually defines the relationship of these two countries. They have their businesses in each other's big cities, and they depend on each other. Their companies actually work in each other's country, and there's a lot of commercial interest, which is there when we talk of United States relation with China. So this is a good news, because there was in the recent past, there was a balloon conspiracy, there was a balloon, espionage, allegations, and there were things that both countries, and there were very harsh language used by leaders of the very important leaders and officials of the both countries. I think this is a good sign that they have a meeting, half an hour meeting with President Xi Jinping and 7 hours meeting between the two foreign ministers, Secretary of State has taken place. And I think this is a good sign. They are trying to find ways and means to resolve their issues. Definitely, we say that it's not there's no quick fix in relationship. There are issues that there are definitely thorny issues with the United States. There are issues which are thorny, with China. But I think both countries have decided to go in direction of peace, and that's a good sign.
Right, Dr. Shakeel, you just mentioned the balloon controversy at that very time, after which we saw that the planned visit by the Secretary of State, Mr. Antony Blinken, was also postponed. That was scheduled to happen in February because of this balloon controversy. So the kind of reaction at that very time we saw from the US, it downing that particular balloon and also alleging China that it was using this balloon for espionage activities, which was categorically denied by the Chinese officials at that time, saying that the US had overreacted to that. Now there is an entirely different sort of a stance we have seen when asked about this balloon controversy. Secretary Blinken said that this chapter should be closed. What's your analysis of that?
Yeah, I think this is a wise way to deal with the data situation. So, when you do allegation thing, and when you discuss issues, particularly when you discuss various actions from conspiracy perspective, so you are likely to give statements that the way, and you are likely to act in a manner that I think Secretary of State acted when they postponed their visit to. So there are signaling in international affairs in the relations between the countries, and particularly the countries like China and US. I think it was a signal given to China that there are, certain issues that we take very seriously. But now saying that we close this chapter means that maybe United States is ready to maybe overlook or look other side or forget something that happened in the past, which created, in fact, fractious situation for both the countries. I think that is also a good sign, and that indicates that the United States of America is trying to forget the past, and they want to move on for the future.
Right, Dr. Shakeel, now both the countries have, during the engagements, during this particular visit, have agreed to stabilize the bilateral relationship. Now, where do you think the stability, bringing that very stability or stabilizing this bilateral relationship after so much deterioration over the last several months, where these two countries should start from?
I think they have many ways to start. For example, for the first, they should, like there are areas of cooperation between the two countries, and they are working on those, areas. And I think they have found some common grounds also to work with each other. The most important thing is that in the American scholarship, there is a feeling that a confrontation or competition with China is not right option. So I think both countries can grow together, and both countries can help the world. And getting into competitive mode or getting into friction or conflict with China is not the right option. And many scholars of late have written about this fact that the United States of America should try to find ways where they can work alongside with China instead of targeting China as a competitor that is to be down first before any cooperation. I think this is a good sign, and trade is first. Maybe there's a cooperation on artificial intelligence, so it has certain black areas also, gray areas also. But there's a lot that they can work together on technology. Of course, trade is one thing that both countries would like to start with first.
Right. A very quick comment regarding this. You all earlier mentioned there is an understanding among the US scholarship that it is not viable for them to have competition and confrontation with China. Is that understanding for both of these phenomenon, competition and confrontation, or is it an understanding just associated with confrontation, not having confrontation that might not be viable for the US?
There are, I have been interacting with Chinese scholars as well. No, Chinese scholars are not for competition, but definitely they are for giving a right status, a right place to China in the community of nations, and they don't actually push on this point. But why the American scholarship now has been expressing this viewpoint that America should not confront, because many scholars in America think the United States of America has been waging wars, has been creating conflicts for the where it could push countries to a place where they no longer remain their friends. But with China, since competition is China is also becoming a big economy like America. They are also technologically becoming advanced. They are now spending a lot of money on innovation and research and development. So there's a real competition. They feel that it's a real competition posed by China. So they are thinking that, and scholarship thinks that if you can try to confront it, I think you should take advantage of this competition and find ways to peacefully coexist.
Right, Dr. Talib Shabir, Director at China-Pakistan Studies Center, Institute of Strategic Studies in Islamabad. Thank you very much for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Mr. Ramay, now Secretary Blinken has said during his engagements with the Chinese officials, he called for direct engagement and sustained communication at senior levels to responsibly manage differences and ensure that the competition does not veer into conflict. How crucial do you think that one is?
Look, first of all, I just want to add you the previous question.
Please.
So China is always looking for the competition, positive competition, not the rivalry or the confrontation. Because the competition is always good, healthy competition. You bring the best out of you. Second, China and US, they noted, so they have record merchandise trade in the 2022. 690 billion US dollar merchandise. I'm not talking about the services. So they're the biggest number in their history. So what trade they are doing. So we have to see what is the problem, why the China and US, the problem is going on. Actually, if we go back to the analysis, it is some rivalry, or you can say something like the tussle between military-industrial complex of USA and Communist Party of China. Because we have seen in the past, so military-industrial complex, they went to any country at the name of liberalization, multinational companies, they captured those economies. If any economy did not comply with that, they introduced democracy there. They got their result. But in case of China, they are not getting those results because there are no senseless democracy, so fighting with each other or pulling the leg of each other. There's stability and they have the one representative. That is a real problem. And as soon as the military-industrial complex of the West learned that they have to live with this reality, the relation will start to improve because they cannot introduce their own type of the democracy there. So these statements, these are on the face. In the reality, we have to see how it will work out. That they, for example, I'll give you one more example why I'm saying the military-industrial complex. USA, they have created a technological department in CIA just to push the technology advancement in China or in USA and contain Chinese company. If it is about the economy, then what the CIA have to do with the technology?
Right, your point is well taken. We're joined by another participant in the studio, Brigadier retired Jagir, Senior Analyst. Brigadier Jagir, thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Secretary Blinken held today visit to China, held important engagements with the Chinese officials, including Chinese president, the top diplomat, as well as the foreign minister. Now, some sort of positive statements coming from the State Department of the US, also from the Chinese Foreign Ministry. Do you think this is the first step, finally, after several months of deterioration of the relationship between the two top economies? This is the first step. The ice has started melting, and it will lead to more positive engagements between the top officials of the two countries.
Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I would just start by saying that it is the thaw in the coldness and the competitive thinking that especially the America and the China was having, and the difference between both of them, it's a good thing, because ultimately the things or the disputes are solved by the talking on the table. So that is the first thing. Although no concrete steps have been elaborated, but it's a good start, I would say, that at least both sides understand each other. One must understand the historical perspective that in the history of the world, it is not something unusual which is happening between China and America. The superpower always wants to dominate the world and wants to what you call as the new world order in the modern terms, or may it be the Macedonians, or may it be the Mughals, may it be the Great Britain. You talk, history is repeated with these types of examples, and God Almighty, it's His prerogative that He does not, the world does not see a superpower ruling the world throughout its tenure. Rise and fall is a continuous process, but this rise and fall, when happens, the superpower enjoying the status of superpower do not accept the rise of any other power that's what we see, that when we read the New World Order, the China containment policy, the Indo-Pacific issue, the Taiwan issue, and the trade issues, the restrictions. So we see that the present world power is not allowing the rising power to come up.
So that is why we have seen the deterioration happening over the last several months.
Yes, that's what it is.
So what about this particular visit? Is there any sort of a
that's what I
realization
say,
among
that
the
it
ranks
is-
of the US officials that competition and confrontation
It's
are?
a good thing. It's a good
So
thing.
there is
As
a
my
shift of
colleague has
policy?
said, that competition is not bad. Competition always produce, if you talk of the trade competition, it is basically for lowering the prices and getting the better quality of the things. But it is not the competition. The healthy competition is not there. When you put restrictions on me and you don't allow me to sell my things, and you want that that market should be monopolized by you only, I have also the right to, on that. China has grown tremendously in the last decade. In all the fields, talking of technology, talking of IT, talking of military power, and it wants that its interest should be safeguarded. Now, when you are powerful, you want that your interest should be safeguarded. So, if you see the Malacca issue, the Indo-Pacific issue, which is bothering China, and rightly so, the Taiwan issue, which is bothering China, and the Americans are directly, overtly and covertly are involved to, and the Chinese have very clearly said that there is no compromise on Taiwan. So, you see the restrictions in the G20 meeting and G7 meeting. They say that we need to contain the trade on restrictions on China. You know, all the big 20s wants that the Chinese should be, Chinese trade should not be on the equal basis. And that's why they are having a China containment policy in which India plays a very vital role. Modi is about to visit USA in a very short period, and you will see that a very different things will come up when he visits over there. Then there is an open technology, sensitive technology transfer which is going to happen and have been agreed between India and USA. It's against whom? So if you want a better world, if you want the world to live peacefully, you want the progress of the people of the world, it is better, and this is the first indicator, that the big one should sit together, talk out their differences, and find a way out instead of just the confrontation.
Right, we're joined by another participant in the show, Mr. Syed Hasan Javed, former ambassador. Mr. Syed Hasan Javed, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. How do you see this particular development? Do you see any sort of shift in U.S. Policy towards China, as we have seen over the last several months, deterioration in this bilateral relationship, and then we saw also the exchange of the very strong worded statements from both the sides. Now this engagement, do you think this is the first step to bring both the countries, and there would be a de-escalation of the situation and more high-level engagements would be expected in the coming days?
Well, thank you very much. The last few months have been very difficult in U.S.-China relations. But you know, in November, on 14th of November, President Xi and President Biden had a sideline meeting in the G20 summit in Bali, in Indonesia, last November 2022, where they agreed actually to start this dialogue at the senior level. And what you see, the visit of Secretary Anthony Blinken is a follow-up to that. And secondly, this visit itself is a marked, I would say, step in that direction, as you said, first step in that direction, because the problems are so complex and the distrust between both parties are so well entrenched, because particularly from the U.S. side, you know, during the President Trump's era, you know, the trust gap has increased between both great powers. So I think this is certainly a positive movement. And the fact that Anthony Blinken had meetings with President Xi Jinping and also with the director of the Central Commission, Mr. Wang Yi, and also State Councilor and the Foreign Minister, Mr. Chin Kang, is a positive step, because dialogue is certainly always better than than no dialogue. So in that respect, of course, this is a step towards the right direction, because you see the no dialogue can lead to miscalculations, and there can be unintended actions which can have unintended consequences. So in that respect, this is just a small step, I would say, because lot seems to be actually a lot of the if you saw the press conference that was held by Mr. Blinken, he actually made a list of the controversial issues, and you know, it only reflects that the but the dialogue, for dialogue's, of course, sake, is a positive step in that direction. But the issues are very which are have been.
Hasan, I seek your partner for the interjection over here. When we talk about this particular high-level engagement between the two countries, likewise, we had seen that one happening in the past between the top two officials of both the countries, President Xi Jinping and President Joe Biden, meeting on this in Bali in November. Now, similar sort of statements, if we take an analysis of those statements, similar sort of reiterations have been done in this particular engagement between the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and other Chinese officials. So, as you already mentioned, that this particular meeting was a follow-up to that meeting between the two presidents. Now, after that meeting, we saw there was a lot of expectation that the relationship between the two countries is going to improve on the positive trajectory. But unfortunately, there was a deterioration in the wake of that particular meeting. Now, do you think the same pattern getting repeated in the future, or after this particular engagement, there is a likelihood of anything positive surfacing out of the engagements between the two countries?
You see, let's be very, very clear. The issues are very, very complex. There is a huge trust gap. And also there has been actions by United States during the President Trump era, when actually a lot of these trust gaps have happened. The Chinese companies have been sanctioned. A lot of entities have been sanctioned, and there have been trade-related measures which have actually created a trust gap and contributed. Plus the talk of containment, especially although what the U.S. in U.S. officials, they say they have no intention to contain China, but the actions that the U.S. have taken so far are just the opposite of what they say, because the way the Quad and Five Eyes coalitions have been organized, and the measures taken in the South China Sea, and especially with respect to Taiwan, and also quite a hardline posture on issues of internal matters of China, and also the sustained propaganda against China in the Western media. Leave little doubt. I mean, China is not a Soviet Union. They are a part of the global system and have a lot of their strengths. So to expect them not to understand what the game is all about, it will be I wouldn't say will be right on the part of those who think that the Chinese are not taking note of what is happening. The Chinese are there have been many policies, and also which have annoyed the Chinese, and the trust gap has increased. So this is not really one visit going to make a difference, because these are issues which go deeper on the strategic level, on the level of the politics. So a cautious optimism. But
right.
I am not really saying that we should expect this one visit or even
right.
a sustained dialogue to resolve some of these issues.
Right. Mr. Syed Hasan Javed, former ambassador, thank you very much for being with us. Mr. Ramay, the same question to you also. Do you see any sort of change this time around after this particular engagement happening in future? Because there was a lot of expectation after that meeting between President Xi Jinping and President Joe Biden. Similar sort of issues were discussed in that one also. But we saw the relationship taking a very different path altogether.
Look, first of all, we need to be very mindful and is separate. Differences are here to stay. Differences are not going anywhere because they are two major powers and they have their own objectives. And what compelled USA to come here? There are two or three things. Number one, they tried to build an alliance against China and ask the countries to decouple with China. It did not happen. Either the close alliance in Europe or other parts of the world. It did not happen. Why? So China is deeply engaged with them. Like Germany Chancellor visited China, and then the French President and a number of people visited them.
So the kind of Chinese role that we have seen in the rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and also giving the 12-point proposal,
that is entirely different.
Increasing influence in the global
and that politics. Is an entirely different aspect. Number two, de-dollarization debate. De-dollarization accelerated in the last few months. And you know, it has happened first time in the history, the world reserves are less than 50% in the dollar. That happened first time. And the share of the yuan is increasing. Third thing, China will never allow the American companies to play what they have played in other countries. Their system is entirely different from the other countries, so they will not find any opposition party to blame the government party so that they can fight with each other. Fourth thing, US government or the state does not have anything to offer to the world for the development. For example, they are the largest economy, but their companies are big, not the state government, not the government have the money. You look to the cupboard, they have to print the money. Now again they have to print the money. Now they have to raise the interest rate. Their government does not have the money. On contrary, China's state have the money. They have the big company, but state-owned enterprises, they are contributing 30 to 32%. So state has the money and strong, and the state can offer so many things like BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, Global Development Initiative, South-South Cooperation, number of other initiatives. So in this competition, China is way ahead. So I know China, and fourth thing, which USA always threatened to every country, the military power, the military might. Now China is far advanced than any country in the world in artificial intelligence based warfare. And they have the missiles which are the gravity based, not the you're going to cruise missile or something like that. Gravity based means they will not be detected from it is coming. It will go, they will break that up here, it will break that gravity and it can come from any side. And no shield, defense shield can work against those missiles. That is one example. So USA has learned this cannot be happen, and this time if there would be war, it will come to the US. Not only it's been fought in a far part of the world, so they cannot win. In all the simulation they did at CIA or a Pentagon and other things, Rent Corporation, they did everything, but they found that they cannot defeat China. So what they are learning, let's try to make some compromises and wait for the time to strike back. That's my feeling. And
what I understand from your take is it's the Chinese supremacy, and there was a little bit of miscalculation on the part of US officials, and now finally they have realized and to come into negotiations with China.
Not supremacy, Chinese engagement with the world. So that is so deep rooted now. You find 152 countries are a member of the Belt and Road Initiative. You find more than 100 countries, China is the biggest trade partner. You find Global Development Initiative, they are offering the world so many other things.
If the US has realized that it can't defeat China, so that necessarily leads us to understand there is an element of supremacy. As you already mentioned, that China supersedes the US when it comes to artificial intelligence based warfare.
That is another topic to talk about what they have for the supremacy. But their mentality is that they are not looking for the supremacy. They are looking for the partnership and the cooperation so we can coexist peacefully. But we have to see, as I mentioned earlier, it's a military industrial complex of China, USA, which is dictating the terms.
Right. Brigadier Jagir, now as Mr. Ramay has mentioned that the dividends, the developmental dividends, the economic dividends the Chinese offer to the world at large, especially to the Europeans or other developing countries also. So there is where the US realization has come to terms now that it's more viable to engage with the Chinese, have negotiations and dialogue rather than going into direct confrontation. Your take?
Look, after the Second World War, US emerged as a superpower of the world. It aligned with the European, so-called European Union countries and UK to form a system which suits the US and the West in the shape of UN and World Bank and other institutions. Now, other countries of the world were not in a position to challenge that. No country in the world till the Chinese rise could have a stay in the world politics, I would say, when after the demise of the USSR. Now, and the American thought that they would be able to manipulate the world as they think appropriate for their own national interest. Second thing is that if you remember, America used the nuclear bomb against China when its homeland was threatened physically by the Japanese. So, they are very sensitive to that. Cuban Missile Crisis are one of the examples that we see. But now, with the rise of the China in the technological field, in the military field, in the diplomatic field, as you was talking about the Chinese role in bringing the Muslim world together, Chinese role in bringing the European Union, their number 2 is there in Germany nowadays, Chinese number 2. And they are now talking of, Chinese are now talking of playing a role in the Palestine issue, which are the basic burning issues of the world. So, they have realized, the US and the allies have realized that a time will come if the China's progress goes unchecked, a time will come that they will not only dominate us technologically in the trade, in the sea lines of communication, in the military field, but they will start dominating us in the world politics also. So, that is what is not acceptable probably to the West and the US. If Saudi Arabia and Iran's problems can be solved, many of the issues of the Middle East will be solved. And you see Iran's Saudi foreign minister was in Iran few days back, and Iranians are also planning to. So, things are getting better. You see, they are also annoyed on China, because China has not taken a pro-US and European Union stance against in the war between Russia and Ukraine. Rather, they are blaming that China is helping Russians. So, these are the issues which are very, very, very complicated. It is not only the trade which is bothering the US and the European Union. And the beauty of the thing is that the European Union is dependent on the Chinese trade. Whole Asia is dependent on the Chinese trade. So, the things have come where it is unstoppable for China to that anybody to put a check on the economic development of China. And moreover, they wanted to go for the B2W, the build a better world. But you see, this terminology was coined, and after that nothing came up. Have the Chinese string and pearl strategy materializes, what happens? That whole the trade, one, the monopoly of the sea lines of communication goes off, trade goes on the Silk Route, which has been there, and who all benefit? You know, it is not the ship merchant ship companies, which are mostly based in the US and the European Union. It is the local people, the whole of Asia, I would say, whole of Europe, I would say. So that is the issue, that they don't want China to go cross a limit where, and that is why they are putting a check on everything, whether in the shape of India, in the Indo-Pacific,
right,
whether in the shape of
right,
China, Taiwan, in the Pacific, whether in the shape of Hong Kong, and you know, clearly every time, you know.
Right. Brigadier Jagir, I see your part from the interjection. Very quick comment regarding, as Mr. Ramay has already mentioned a couple of times, it's been talked about a lot, the military industrial complex of the United States. And Mr. Ramay alluding to the fact that the Chinese have got that very edge in terms of artificial intelligence-laced military warfare. Now, what's your understanding of that?
Look, what I would say that yes, technologically, if not better, they have become compatible with the Europe and Americans' business industrial complex. They have started the thing in the past. They have now their third aircraft carrier is getting ready. A fourth is being built up, and you will see in half a decade, China will be much ahead in the technological military technology advancement and that. Although European Union and US and UK, in the history of last 3 to 4 to 5 decades, they are the one who had
right,
been the manufacturer of the weapons, exporters of the weapons, and all that.
right.
But it is the first time in the history of the world that another nation has come up.
Right, your point is well taken. Unfortunately, we are short of time. Mr. Shakeel Ramay, your quick comment regarding, as Mr. Xi Jinping has urged the US not to hurt the legitimate rights and interests of China. Do you think the US officials are going to take this call seriously this time around?
They will take it seriously, and either they like it or not, they have to abide by it, because they are dealing with China. They are not dealing with some small country. Either they like it or not, they have to abide by. And last thing which I want to say about Iran, Saudi Arabia, one lesson for Pakistan, for Pakistanis. In Pakistan, there was divide on a sectarian basis, some following the Iran, some was following Saudi Arabia. I asked them, did Iran and Saudi Arabia...
for some other show perhaps. I'll have to end the show over here. Mr. Shakeel Ramay, Senior Economist, thank you very much for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. In the studio, we were also joined by Brigadier Retired Shahid Jagir, Senior Analyst. Thank you very much for your time also, for being with us. With that note, we come to the end of today's show. Till the next one, take care of yourselves.